Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. If you have not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button as we're now on the road to 500 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. If you love sports content, sports talk, anything from sports betting to updated rankings every week, it's all right here on the Talk of the Town podcast. And here today, we're going to be going over some of the best games from Week 16, from Patriots-Ravens, Steelers-Lions, Jags-Broncos, and a few more games in there as well. I will say yesterday was not necessarily the best slate for games. I usually always say this time of year is like games either mean everything to teams or they just don't really mean shit, and there's like no in between. So we're just kind of to that point in the year right now. We're also going to be going over the AFC and the NFC playoff picture and where I think the seedings are going to finalize here in the next few weeks. Fernando Mendoza potentially to the New York Giants, especially after Jackson Dart's concerning performance yesterday against the Vikings. And we're going to round it off talking about with Mike McDaniel and Zac Taylor keeping their jobs in Miami and Cincinnati after a few reports that came out yesterday. So make sure to stay tuned. It's going to be a good video. And let's get right into it here today, starting off with the Patriots and Ravens 28-24 last night. As a Patriots fan who lives 20 minutes away from M&T Bank where the Ravens play at, this game meant a lot more to me than just, in terms of the Patriots staying alive in the AFC East race, the number one seed race with Denver and Jacksonville, and then some other teams in there, and clinching a playoff spot last night. So, in terms of bragging rights and shit-talking rights and a bunch of other things, I live in a household full of Ravens fans. I have friends that are diehard Ravens fans, so I am going to talk about this with bias aside, but just kind of wanted to throw that in there. Is that besides all the playoff implication stuff, this game had a lot more of a meaning to me last night than that. It felt good to be able to talk shit and stuff like that to my friends and some family last night. So felt good, but game wise. I was concerned about the Patriots coming into this game, to be honest with you, especially after the Bills game last week, where they could have locked up the AFC East last week against the Bills, and it was looking like at the end of the first half they were going to do so. I mean, how they were up 24-7. Bills had no momentum. I was like, as long as we could just close out a strong second half of good football, the Patriots would be AFC East champions in week 15 or something like that. And really just kind of locked this thing up. But they lost. They blew it. Their offense just had no momentum in the second half. Josh Allen and the Bills were just out there humming. And I was like, that was kind of a demoralizing loss, especially after all the cupcake schedule allegations. People were like, they've been saying all year they beat nobody. And look, they do have the weakest schedule within the last 20, 30 years or something like that. I think they said that last night. But nonetheless, I always say any given Sunday. Like, any team can beat any team any given Sunday, no matter who it is. Hell, the Browns gave the Bills a hassle yesterday. I was like, the Browns going to win this game? We seen Miami. I mean, they curb stomped the Bills. It was like a month and a half or so ago. I mean, the Bills went into Miami and just got killed. I mean, it wasn't like it was a field goal miraculous game. It was like, they just didn't play great. I mean, Miami went in there and beat them by a decent bit. So it's not like, hey, they play the Browns as a guaranteed win. There's no such thing in the NFL. I mean, look at the Titans. People count the Titans as a bottom-of-the-barrel team, which they are. But, and they beat the Chiefs yesterday, who are without Mahomes and without Minshew. I mean, they're in there playing someone. I had to look him up, and it was like, he has two rings on the Chiefs practice squad. What's that? I think it's like a Loacon or something like that. But even nonetheless, they played against the 49ers last week. They're a pretty feisty team. I mean, they hang around with teams now. They're a lot different of a team than they were at the beginning of the year. So, any given Sunday. And it does play into a factor, but even I was saying yesterday, like, I sat on my couch when they were down 11 and Huntley came in. I was like, shit. I was talking to my girlfriend and my parents. I was like, maybe the schedule does factor in a little bit here. And I think it does factor in somewhat, but I'm like, I do think they're able to stick in with good teams. So they beat Buffalo earlier in the season. And they beat some decent teams this year, some good teams. And the Ravens, meanwhile, they are 7-8. They did end up losing Lamar midway throughout the game. They still are a good team regardless. I mean, Derrick Henry was kind of running through them yesterday. So, and we'll get into that here in a few with them when they stopped running the ball with Henry in the fourth quarter, and everyone's calling for John Harbaugh's head this morning. But, the injuries the Patriots have sustained throughout the last few weeks, and even last night they lost a good bit of players last night, and they look like kind of temporary injuries. It's not going to be something that's season ending or anything like that, but it was rough. And they came into the game yesterday without Will Campbell for like 3 or 4 consecutive weeks. He's coming back here in a few. Vidarian Lowe is just a backup tackle. He's not great. Morgan Moses ended up going to the locker room, and then his backup, I think his name's Mumford, and he ended up getting hurt. I'm like, are they going to end up calling me up to play right tackle by the end of this game? I was getting really concerned. I was like, as long as May and some of their best players, Diggs, as long as they can just leave out of here alive, I'd be like, yeah. And I take that as a win. I didn't even really care if they won last night, outside of personal reasons, but yeah, man, I was concerned. Again, they were out without Milton Williams now, who is able to come off of IR this week. Their best defensive lineman by a mile. They ended up paying him a lot of money. Robert Spillane, their best linebacker. He's their leading tackler. Without him, who always is really good against the Ravens for some reason. We always mention that. He ends up driving my dad nuts whenever Robert Spillane would play on the Raiders or the Steelers. He would just go crazy because he ends up playing really good against the Ravens. So I was hoping he'd play. But, yeah, man, they had some pretty serious injuries yesterday, some really good players. So Travion Henderson went down. I was pretty concerned, but Huntley ended up coming in the game. Lamar had a bruised back. And even with Huntley, he was still leading the charge. They were running it with Henry. Next thing I look up, it's an 11-point game. I'm like, man, maybe, after the Bills game last week, they're kind of at M&T now. They don't really look like they have any signs of life. May threw the pick in the opening drive of the game. He had a fumble. I was like, and then the fake punt just kind of blew my mind, to be honest with you as well. I hated that call by Vrabel. But anyway, the Baltimore Ravens, their season's over. I thought, like I mentioned, I thought that game was sealed up. All they had to do was keep running the ball with Derrick Henry, and they would have ended up winning that game. Drake May played a fantastic game yesterday. He almost had 400 yards passing, and they ended up coming back, showing some real resiliency against a pretty good team. Even though they were without Lamar, they're still good nonetheless on both sides of the ball. But the Ravens season is over. I made a statement before the season started that this was the most important season in franchise history for the Baltimore Ravens. I was like, if they make the AFC Championship and lose, if they make the divisional round, the wild card round and lose, they fell well short of expectations. They were the favorites in Vegas to win the Super Bowl this year. And I was just like, Harbaugh's going to be gone. It's going to create a pretty toxic environment. It kind of felt like their year. And then as time went on from the beginning of the season till now, they just have never been able to kind of spark any sort of momentum. I know they got on like a 5-game winning streak, but how you look at that point of their schedule, they were playing against the Jets. They did end up beating the Bears with Huntley, but they were playing a really weak part of their schedule. And when they had to play against some of the better teams, even when they had a healthy Lamar at the beginning of the year, I was like, against Buffalo the first week, which, look, you're going against Josh Allen, who just won the MVP a few months prior, their first game back. Buffalo ended up coming back and winning that game. You're going against Josh Allen and you end up losing a game like that. It's not really an excuse, but it's also at the same time, it's like, hey, you lose to Josh Allen, you can kind of wipe it off, move on to the next week. Then against Detroit, hell, they just looked outmatched in that game. I remember watching Gibbs and Montgomery and the offensive line. They were just working that Baltimore Ravens team. They had like 7 sacks that game. Even with the healthy Lamar, they were just kind of getting stomped. The Chiefs game, that's the game Lamar got hurt, tore his hamstring or hurt his hamstring, whatever it was. And, regardless, even when Lamar was playing, to look up, they were down like 28-7 at one point or something. They were just getting killed by the Chiefs. They just never really had anything all year. I think even if Lamar didn't have this hamstring injury, this team has some real concerning issues within their coaching staff. Zach Orr is a terrible defensive coordinator. I know they've gotten better throughout the second half of the season, and everyone's like, hey, this is the second year in a row. The first half of the season, their defense is historically bad, and then they really turn it up for the second half. And it's like, you can't do that. And even still, Drake may have 400 yards passing yesterday. They did end up having a pick, but he was just kind of just driving down the field all over the Ravens yesterday. And they had multiple times I looked there and third and long, and third and 15, and Mays converting it. I mean, they're only rushing 3, rushing 4. They're barely rushing anyone against a pretty injury-depleted offensive line. I was like, look, he's tough to take down even if you blitz him anyway. But that's kind of the way to beat the Patriots right now. Like, if you're to blitz him, if they were to blitz him for a majority of the game, I think the Ravens end up winning that game. But they're letting him sit back there in a clean pocket all day to throw, and it's like, what is Zach Orr doing? I've been saying that all year with the Ravens. And John Harbaugh, again yesterday, you can go trace it back like most of their losses. They're up. They're beating teams. The Bills, the same way in the first week of the first game of the year for the Ravens. They're up on them. All they have to do is keep running the ball. Look, I know Henry had that fumble at the beginning of the game, but it's just because Henry fumbles one time does not mean you can't put him in the rest of the game or use him at all the rest of the game. It happens. Running backs fumble all the time. Now, if it turns into be a consistent issue, it's one thing, and I see Ravens fans everywhere sitting there saying, like, hey, this has been an issue all year. I don't think Derrick Henry's fumbled since like week 3 or week 4. I mean, he's been on a pretty consistent stretch of not fumbling the football. So, I mean, it's been like 11 weeks since he's fumbled, I think, or at least lost a fumble. So it hasn't necessarily been a consistent issue. And he was running the ball all over the Patriots yesterday. And in the fourth quarter, after that drive, they went up by 11. He ended up scoring. He didn't touch the ball. And Harbaugh's been taking some serious shit for it all day. And I think that's the beginning of the end for John Harbaugh in this Ravens era. Like I mentioned earlier, that I had a take at the beginning of the year, like before the season started, that if the Ravens didn't at least get to the Super Bowl, that it would get toxic. You have Hall of Famers all over the field. D-Hop came to Baltimore, won the ring. Lamar Jackson is going to be in Canton one day, whether or not people like it. He will be in Canton. Derrick Henry will be in Canton one day. And, you have potential, I mean, maybe not necessarily Hall of Famers, but guys that are in the Hall of very good. Mark Andrews, in his prime, was one of, if not the best tight end of the league for 4 or 5 years. I mean, he was up there with Kelsey and Kittle. Like, they were kind of all 1A, 1B, and 1C. Like, those guys were all up there with each other. He was with those group of guys who are Hall of Famers. So I don't think Mark Andrews will necessarily be in the Hall of Fame, but he's in the Hall of very good. I mean, in terms of being a Raven, he'll be in the Ravens Hall of Fame. There's no doubt about that. He's like their leading receiver in almost every aspect there is. He's broke a lot of records this season for them. It's over. And one of the things that's really concerning with the Ravens' future is I don't know if they're going to make changes. Is everyone's like, they need to fire Harbaugh. DeCosta and those guys are pretty loyal. They're really, they love Harbaugh a lot. They consider him like family. And the thing is like, if they go out here, and whether or not they win these next 2 games, it won't matter. Pittsburgh's going to beat Cleveland next week. Like, there's no chance Cleveland's going to win that game against Pittsburgh next week. And even still, it's like, even if Pittsburgh loses, are we really confident that Baltimore can go out there, considering Lamar's injury status, whether or not he'll play against Green Bay? And I don't know Jordan Love's injury status either. It's looking like he's probably going to suit up for the most part. Even though Green Bay's pretty injury-prone themselves right now, I think Green Bay still wins that game on Saturday. It's a short week. That's not necessarily a gimme game at all, but for both of those teams. But I think it definitely means a lot more to Baltimore than it does to Green Bay. I mean, Baltimore is on serious life support right now. And I don't know if I trust DeCosta and them to make the right decision. I just mentioned Mark Andrews a few minutes ago, and I was like, he's probably going to be in the Ravens Hall of Fame. I think he definitely will be. And the thing is they just signed him to where they've been looking to move off of Mark Andrews for the last year or two now. He's been injury prone, and he's definitely just been a shell of himself. He's still an okay tight end, but he's not anywhere where he used to be a few years ago. And it's like, you know what? While you can get some sort of value for him, you can kind of get off of this contract, reset. Charlie Kohler has been really good as a tight end for them. They drafted him a few years ago. Young, upcoming guy, kind of starting to build a connection with Lamar, but he can't necessarily fully build a connection because Mark Andrews is still there. And it's like, okay, after this season, you can kind of move off of some dead wood. Kansas City's going to be doing it after this year. I mean, hell, Kelsey's probably going to retire. They're going to move off of Chris Jones. They're going to have kind of like a I'd say more than a mini rebuild coming up. I mean, their teams get old, and now Mahomes is dealing with injury issues. Lamar's dealing with injury issues. These kind of teams are on the same timeline right now. They both kind of started being good around the same time, 2017, 2018, when they both got their franchise quarterbacks. And their franchises really kind of revved up to that point. And they're kind of in the same timeline. Their quarterbacks are kind of now starting to get injured. They're not old, but they're getting older. There's some real concern for the Baltimore Ravens' future. And I don't know if I trust them to move off of Harbaugh. And Mark Andrews, they just signed him for 3 years. One thing that's really concerning about that is, like, there was 2 plays yesterday that were terrible. One was the fake punt call by Mike Vrabel and the Patriots. I don't know what the hell they were doing there. I thought that was just bad. And then the play to where Mark Andrews lateraled it backwards. Now, it ended up being a illegal forward pass, but nonetheless, I was like, what the hell was that? We all were, not even just me. We all were. We're like, that's a play that, like, a rookie makes, like a rookie 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round tight end makes. You know, it's like, it's just a rookie mistake. That guy's been in the league for years. I mean, like 8 years now. And you just signed him for another 3 years. And I was like, everyone is like, you should move off of this guy. And now you got him cash strapped for another. It's like 40. It's like under like 3 years, 40 mil, like 28 of it's guaranteed. And I just look and I'm like, I think Baltimore's planning on running this back. And it's like, they're not necessarily going to have the 8th pick in the draft, but they're going to draft probably like 16, 17, something like that. They're probably in a spot to where they can trade up a few, maybe get the 10th or something like that, depending on how aggressive they are. And it's just like, I don't know if I really think that Baltimore is going to move off of John Harbaugh, move off of some of their older players. After seeing the Mark Andrews signing and clearly seeing he's past his prime, I mean, that play yesterday isn't something an 8-year veteran makes that's been with your team forever. He's clearly past his prime to this point. And I was just like, I don't know what the Ravens are doing, and I don't know what their future holds for him, but I think their worst mistake is going to be holding on to Harbaugh, holding on to this coaching staff, holding on to Monken, holding on to Zachary Orr. And honestly, I think it could be trending in that direction. We'll see how these next couple of weeks go. Maybe they do end up by a miraculous chance making the playoffs, but with Lamar's injury status and all, I don't know. I think I'm going to talk a lot more about it in a future show, especially after the next couple of weeks, towards the end of the season here. But that game yesterday for the Ravens was they're now on life support. Their season was on the line yesterday, and they had it. All they had to do was keep running the ball. And John Harbaugh gets in that mode to where they just don't run the ball anymore. They beat themselves. That's what I was sitting there telling myself, was like, that's the only way the Ravens can lose, is if they beat themselves. And they continuously do it week in and week out. And that's what they did yesterday. And speaking of the AFC North and keeping their hopes alive, Steelers-Lions yesterday, was it 29-24? I think we all know the main thing with this game was the offensive pass interference call at the end of the game. That's the thing everyone's talking about. Look, I think even without that, I don't really feel bad for the Lions at all. Everyone's like, oh, I feel bad for the Lions. They got screwed, this and that. It's like, they had multiple chances to win that game. I mean, their offense, one thing with Dan Campbell, and while I give him a lot of credit for what he's done with Detroit, he's like a city that had not even a pulse. I mean, he's given them full life. And that city didn't even have a pulse before he got there. I give him a lot of credit for what he's done, but I think his 4th down decisions, his risks are kind of starting to come back to bite him in the ass now. Like, I remember a few years ago when the whole thing started, I think they were in the NFC Championship versus San Francisco, and they ended up going for it on a 4th down instead of kicking the field goal, which ultimately cost them a spot in the Super Bowl. I was like, them going for it in that situation a few years ago was crazy, but everyone kind of let him off the hook, like, oh, the Lions got a few more years of the Super Bowl window. I give them credit, whatever it is. No one even expected them to be there. Well, the next year, they were 15-2 last year. They ended up getting smoked by the Commanders in the AFC divisional after they got the number 1 seed. And it was just like, man, the Lions still probably have another few years left of this window. And last night, I think that window closed for the Lions. Technically, they're still alive, but they're kind of in the Ravens position to where it's like they're not in control of their own destiny at all anymore. It's like they have to rely on a lot of things to go their way. And it's like you start looking at the odds of it, and it's like, I don't necessarily know. It's like, can we necessarily even trust this team to win out to begin with? Their defense has injuries all over the field. It's been like that the last few years. I mean, their secondary has me and you out there, to be honest with you. It's just like those guys are not, NFL talent. They're out there filling in guys. They're like fourth string safeties and shit out there. Now, when they're healthy, they got Brian Branch. They had Kirby Joseph. I mean, they had a serious safety tandem out there that was like legit one of, if not the best in the NFL. Decent corners, maybe not great corners, but decent. But it's like, Terrion Arnold's out for the rest of the year. Their corners are it's all over the place for the Lions. Their secondary, this has been an issue with them the last 2 years now. It's like they just can't stay healthy. And yesterday, just multiple times throughout the game, just completely getting away from Jahmyr Gibbs, not running the ball. He's mainly, honestly, to be honest with you, a lot of these games they've won, it hasn't necessarily been Jared Goff and the pass attack that's won them games. Yeah, they've been fantastic, and they were earlier in the season. But as of recently, I mean, hell, you look back to that New York Giants game from about a month or so ago. Jahmyr Gibbs was one of, honestly, that was one of, if not the best game of his life right there. And he's been, whether or not they were shutting him down all game or whatever it was, he is prone at any point to making a seriously game-changing play. And yeah, the Lions got some momentum towards the end of the game, but for a majority of that game, I just thought they were way too aggressive in terms of passing the ball, fourth down decisions. I was just like, Dan Campbell and these fourth down decisions are just costing him, to be honest with you. And that's why I don't necessarily feel for the Lions. I know that offensive pass interference call. Look, regardless, I'm going to be honest with you. It was forward progress. He didn't have the touchdown anyway. And people talk about, the referees. I'm with it. I'm with you guys. Week in and week out, how that Patriots game yesterday. At the end of the game, Marlon Humphrey not getting a pass interference call on Kayshon Boutte. I don't know if you guys seen that. I think everyone's seen it. That was one of the worst no calls I have ever seen. And all year, calls have just been all over the place. They've been terrible. I mean, honestly, these referees this year, there needs to be some sort of consequences to how bad they've just been. Game in and game out for every team in every game. They've just been absolutely terrible. I mean, they try to make themselves the star of the show. It's funny enough because Puka Nacua said something on that Aiden Ross live stream, which, I didn't necessarily agree with him going on Aiden Ross's stream. Look, as a young guy who watches streamers, watches YouTube, watch it every day. I don't watch Aiden Ross, but I do know of Aiden Ross and stuff like that. Look, I think Puka Nacua, he said he needed money to go on and do something. It's like, bro, you're one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in the NFL at the moment. Go get a sponsorship somewhere. Go film a commercial somewhere and go make some money. You know what I'm saying? But on that stream, he did say that the referees, he thinks they just the refs like seeing their face on television. It's like, hey, we're on Sunday Night Football, we're on Monday Night Football, whatever it is. It's like, hey, you get to see us on the television. I do think that's true to a point. It's like these guys, it's like, bro, but no one wants to see you. That's the thing, is like, we only want to see you when the right call needs to be made. And look, yesterday, whether or not it was or it wasn't offensive PI, it didn't matter because of forward progress. 5 guys were pushing him forward. It wasn't past the goal line, whatever it wasn't a touchdown regardless. The lateral to Goff, it was clearly, look, he was being dragged down by 5 people. Progress was stopped regardless. It didn't count, And that's why I don't necessarily feel for the Lions. Lions had multiple chances that game to come back and win that game. I didn't like their play calling all game. Tesla earlier, I thought it was a good play. I think it was Jalen Ramsey defending it as well, but he had a touchdown catch there. Just multiple times. The referees in every game are just so bad. I mean, they're terrible, but Lions season was in the balance yesterday. They didn't end up capitalizing, man, and they're not in control of their own destiny anymore. I know the 49ers and the Bears love seeing that loss, but the Steelers yesterday, again, one thing I say too is like Jalen Warren, they let him turn into Walter Payton yesterday. Barry Sanders. I mean, he was just running all over me, and multiple, like, I think it was like 35, 40-yard touchdowns yesterday. It's like, I don't, there's multiple times that in that game, they could have won that game, made some big stops, and they just didn't do it. The Steelers, on the other hand, are now, after seeing that Patriots win yesterday, I mean, they play Cleveland this week, and it'll pretty much, it locks it up for them. Baltimore can't get a wild card spot regardless, but, you know, Pittsburgh, I know after seeing that win from New England and winning that game against Detroit yesterday, which honestly, I thought Detroit was going to win that game. I was like, the Steelers offense all year. Meanwhile, they've kind of caught a spark these last few weeks. I didn't think they could keep up with Detroit's offense. And even Detroit going against good defenses has been really good to begin with anyway. They haven't really necessarily been stopped by anybody. That's why I thought, you know what? While the Steelers' defense has been getting better, I was like, there's no way they're going to be able to keep up with Detroit's offense. But they ended up doing so. And again, like I mentioned, Detroit didn't run the ball much yesterday, which I thought was kind of to their detriment. I know they were kind of stopping Jahmyr Gibbs for the most part yesterday, but still, I can't believe the Lions lost that game. Not because of the last play of the game, which was nuts. Just otherwise, I mean, they had all game to win that game, and I didn't like their play calling at all yesterday. Their secondary now, multiple years in a row, and just getting demolished by injuries. And yeah, man, Steelers now in full control of their own destiny. A win against Cleveland locks it up for them. And I think we'll be seeing the Steelers in the playoffs here in a few weeks. Jags-Broncos 34-20 yesterday. The Jags, man. I made a short about the Jags. So I think it was last week. I was talking about, hey, man, the Jags are one of the most underrated teams in the league. People don't talk about them because they're a small market, this and that. And it's actually my most viewed short, right? I think it was actually my most viewed video. Again, thank you guys for that. Any Jags fans or anyone who watched that video and left comments. I got like 300 likes and like 50-something comments on it, man. I love seeing that. But, and I had some people in there saying, size, small market, they're not a small market, this and that. It's like, I'm going to be honest with you guys, and especially after seeing the Sean Payton comment about them being a small market, then Liam Cohen kind of poked back at him. It's like, Sean Payton comment aside, it's kind of what I'm saying. Is people are talking about the Jags with the small market thing. It's like, it's true. I mean, the Jags are a small market. I mean, are they even like a top four, football franchise in their state? I mean, how you got Florida State. Everyone loves that. The Dolphins, which meanwhile, the Dolphins aren't very good either, especially compared to Jacksonville right now. But it's no secret that the Dolphins are more popular than the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, it's true. They are a small market. Compare them to Dallas. I mean, I guess you can necessarily say compare anyone to Dallas. Dallas is the biggest market in football, but I'm not necessarily saying it as an insult, but it's true. And just because they're a small market doesn't necessarily make them a bad team. But they are a small market, and they've been terrible for years. And I say this, like, compared to the Bears right now, the Jags and the Bears last year were awful. They were a hard watch into some of the worst teams in the NFL. They are in pretty much the same situation this year. New head coaches, number one overall, generational talent QBs that, everyone was calling them generational talents. However you want to take that as however you take it. But nonetheless, they're in the exact same situation this year. Who gets talked about more? The Bears. The Bears are a bigger market than Jacksonville. I mean, maybe not. I mean, they're a way bigger market than Jacksonville is, but it's like there's about, Ben Johnson deserves the coach of the year. People don't even really mention Liam Cohen. I think they're starting to mention him now, especially after that Denver win. But it's like Jacksonville has beat good teams this year and still doesn't get talked about. But I mean, you compare it to the Bears situation. These two teams are like within the same situation of the last couple of years. The last 10 years or so, yeah. The Bears had a NFC Championship appearance back in like 2010 or something like that. Didn't end up doing anything. Jacksonville, 2017, ended up making a AFC Championship appearance. They have a couple of outlier years of the last 10, 15 years or so where they make the playoffs or they make a little bit of a run in the playoffs. But for the most part, you look up at the draft board, March, and where's Jacksonville and Chicago picking? 5, 4, 3, 1, 6, whatever. Like, they're constantly picking top 5 in the draft. Always, because they suck. But now they're both good teams. And I watched Jacksonville yesterday beat the shit out of the Broncos. I mean, they looked really good. And I've given Jacksonville a lot of credit all year to where, yeah, they may be a small market team, but they are a good team and they deserve a lot of credit for what they've done. Liam Cohen is a fantastic coach. I mean, he's kind of unlocked someone, Trevor Lawrence. Like, I said earlier this year that Trevor Lawrence was kind of a flaw for that team. I didn't believe in Jacksonville because he was throwing a lot of turnovers. Even when they were winning games, it was like, this is not going to be able to be sustainable, even if they do get to the playoffs. But these last, 3 or 4 weeks, I mean, he's looked like the number 1 overall pick he was supposed to be. He looks incredible. He looks like Justin Herbert out there moving around, throwing. I mean, he's kind of making a name for himself finally. And when people are kind of writing him off as like, he's not a bust, but he's also not necessarily the generational talent coming out of Clemson he was supposed to be. But he was getting Luck comps, Manning comps, and he just kind of wasn't living up to it, which, mind you, it is hard to live up to Peyton Manning comparisons. But nonetheless, it's like, we're just kind of expecting you to be a good QB, and it's like you're kind of average and below average, like you're average at best. And now it's like, he looks like a top 10 QB playing at his best over these last 4 weeks. He looks fantastic. And I watched them yesterday, like that Jacoby Myers trade they made. You know, one of I think it may have been the best trade out of the trade deadline trades we've seen this year. I mean, that connection he has with Trevor Lawrence is great. Brian Thomas Jr. finally kind of starting to get something going there, picking up off of that season he had in his rookie year. I had a tough start. He was pretty cold, but he's kind of called a spark. ATN, who people were kind of writing off as like, should ATN get traded? Look at the runs he was breaking off yesterday, man. I mean, against an elite defense with Surtain, Benito, Allen, like these are guys on defense that are high-level players that any team would just love to have them on their team. And Jacksonville was kind of picking them apart, man. I mean, they were had a commanding lead and were just all over the place, all over the field, should I say that game, on offense and defense. And the Jags are legit. I mean, I look up and it's like, this team could easily be in the AFC Championship. They're getting hot at the right time right now. I see teams that get hot at this time of year. There's teams that peak too early, and then there's teams that get hot at the right time. And Jacksonville's getting hot at the right time. Now Denver, look, that's their first loss in a while. I think they'll be fine. But that offense yesterday, well, they had some good drives. Bo Nix had some turnovers in that game. He had an interception, and they kind of just couldn't really get anything going. But, you know, you're due for a loss every now and then. Jacksonville, it's not like going against Tennessee or Cleveland or the Jets, who are by far the worst team in the league right now. The Jets and the Giants, both New York teams. But, it opens up the number 1 seed. This game does for the Jags and the Broncos and the Patriots and some other teams in there. Like, you kind of look now. The Patriots, after that win yesterday, right up there with the Broncos, they're tied. Jacksonville, we're kind of just talking about them. Can they just win their own division? Now they're a game back from the number 1 seed. I do think when it's all said and done, it's going to be the Patriots and the Broncos, though. I mean, the Patriots play the Dolphins with Quinn Ewers and then what's his name? Brady Cook or something like that. With the Jets, who are just a disaster. I mean, they got blown out by the fucking Saints yesterday. And it's like, the Saints have won their last 3 out of 4 with Tyler Shuck, but I mean, Jesus, it didn't even look competitive yesterday. It was terrible. So I think the Patriots will get the number 1 seed when it's all said and done. I don't know how the tiebreaker works necessarily, but the number 1 seed is wide open for, I think, these 3 teams. I think Buffalo is just a game back, a little bit of a game behind, considering who Denver plays and New England plays. And I think Jacksonville still has to play a game against Houston, which I think is pretty tough. So it's wide open for these teams, man. Jacksonville, incredible yesterday. Denver was due for a loss, but I still think they're in it. I still think their defense is fantastic. And Jacksonville's a good team, man. Props to them yesterday. Talking about a game to where, Bucs-Panthers yesterday, what was it, 20-23. Panthers win. What a win. I mean, the Panthers, I made a really hot take at the beginning of the year with the Carolina Panthers. And I was like, Bryce Young is going to be an MVP candidate this year. Now, he may have not necessarily lived up to that, but there's no doubt that man has made some serious improvement this year. I mean, props to him, dude, seriously. I made a bold prediction about the Panthers potentially making the playoffs and winning some games. I was like, people talk about the Saints who are going to be terrible, which they are. Actually, I think they've kind of lived up to, being above expectations this year, especially throughout these last couple of weeks. They actually look pretty good. They look decent. And the Panthers, everyone's like, they may improve a little bit. What are they going to finish with, like 6 wins or something like that? I was like, I think the Panthers may finish 10-7 and end up winning this division. Maybe over Tampa. Maybe Tampa falls apart. I didn't necessarily like the Ibuka pick at the time. And over the last few weeks, Ibuka has not looked great. I know at the beginning of the season, I was like, God, this guy's a slam dunk of a pick. But I was like, they kind of need defense. Their secondary was not good last year. I thought Will Johnson was on the board. I was like, they got to take Will Johnson, right? Or another corner on the board at least, or another safety, a linebacker, something. And they took a receiver. I was like, you have Godwin and Evans. I was like, I didn't really like the pick. And Ibuka hasn't necessarily been as impactful the last few weeks, but I was bold on the Panthers. I was like 10-7. I think they could go to the playoffs. And I was like, this is a team that, like, hey, no one's necessarily going to be like, hey, we see the Rams, we see the 49ers, we see the Packers, we see whoever it is. We're not worried about playing the Panthers. We want to play the Panthers in the playoffs. And it's like, maybe the Panthers can win a playoff game or two. And it's kind of like Panthers are now 8-7 in control of their own destiny. I know they have to play Tampa again. Forgot who they play coming up this week. I do think it's actually a pretty tough opponent. But imagine if they beat the Saints. There's no doubt to me they'd go 10-7 at least. I think them and Tampa will finish 9-8, and it'll be a tie to see whoever wins or I think it's going to come down to that last game of the year against those two teams. So I think that's going to be a hell of a game there to see who wins the NFC South. I know the Falcons are looking at that. It's like, Jesus, look at our roster right now. We're not even competing with the Panthers or a crumbling Tampa Bay team right now. But, I made that prediction. I was like, wow. And it's kind of coming alive. While I believed it, I don't necessarily just spew stuff out there just to say and create a hot take. Like, I did believe the Panthers could make some noise. I really loved the Tetaroa McMillan pick for Bryce Young. And I was like, their offensive line's pretty good. J.C. Horn and that secondary is good. Derek Brown's going to be healthy this year, which last year he wasn't. I was like, this Carolina team's actually pretty good. And look at them this year. They're 8-7 now, or what are they? I think, no, yeah, they are 8-7. And in control of their own destiny. And I'm just like, wow. Really impressive win from the Panthers yesterday. And watching Baker and the Bucs fall apart is like, Todd Bowles is fighting for his life. It kind of feels like a dead man walking in that Tampa Bay organization right now. Now, if they do not make the playoffs, I do think Todd Bowles will be fired from there. Whether or not they're going to hire Robert Saleh or Minter or whomever. I don't necessarily know who's guaranteed to be in the head coaching cycle this year, but I guess we'll see coming up here in the next few weeks. But Todd Bowles feels like a dead man walking in Tampa. Baker throwing that pick yesterday for Tampa. At the end of the game, Baker has not necessarily been great these last few weeks. I don't think Tampa needs a quarterback by any stretch. I think Baker's playing through a shoulder injury, which we've seen what he did in his last few years in Cleveland. Kind of deteriorated his play a little bit. Cleveland actually ended up moving off of him, which I think if they could go back and change that decision, they would in a heartbeat. I think they would have ended up keeping Baker. I don't think Tampa's in need of a quarterback at all. Like I mentioned, I think Baker is playing through injury, but nonetheless, this team is just completely falling apart. I seen the game against Atlanta last week, and how pissed off Mike Evans got, and Todd Bowles' speech at the end of the game in the post game conference or the post game interview, and he was just cussing up a storm. I mean, it's toxic in Tampa. And that's why I don't think they're going to get this back. I think it's beyond just like, they're kind of in a slump. Like, they can pull off these last couple of games. That locker room has some words that are being thrown around that are like, this team's done for this season, at least. They have a lot of talent. It's not like this team is bad. We look up and it's like, God, this team sucks. Baker sucks. Evans sucks. It's like the receiving core isn't good. Their pass rush isn't good. I just think it's toxic in that locker room. And once you get that atmosphere, you need a firing somewhere. And that's where I think that decision for Tom Bowles is going to be made after the last game of the season, after that Carolina game. Again, considering they don't make the playoffs, which I don't think Tampa's going to, they still have like a 54% chance to make, or 54% chance, that's what I've seen at least, to make the playoffs. But it's tough sledding, man. It's kind of like the Buccaneers are kind of just going up Schitt's Creek without a paddle right now, to be honest with you. So I don't know, but it's not good. And the Panthers, making me look good for that take I had before the season started, but props to that, man. I love that Tetero McMillan pick. Bryce Young with some really clutch throws yesterday. Still kind of questionable about Dave Canales, but this has been a fun team to watch all year, and just a surprise. And it's like they are an incredibly young team with a really cheap head coach and Bryce Young on like no sort of contract whatsoever. So if they have some money to spend, they're going to be at least some sort of an attractive franchise to go to. It's not like they're 3-14 every year now, whatever it is. So hopefully they'll be able to pull in some free agents. They'll be able to get something going there in Carolina. So definitely something to keep an eye out for there. Panthers, man, seriously impressed with them. So getting into my AFC and NFC playoff picture here. This is what it's looking like right now. This is the NFC playoff picture as we speak. Broncos at the 1, Patriots at the 2. Then, they're actually tied for the number 1 seed right now. But right now the Jags 3, Steelers 4, Chargers 5, Bills 6, Texans at 7, and in the hunt is the Colts and the Ravens, which I don't think those two are going to make the playoffs. I think it's set. I think the teams that are in the playoffs right now are at least, in the playoffs right now are going to be the teams in the playoffs. Now, in terms of seeding, I do think the Patriots will get the 1. I know you guys are like, oh, bias. You mentioned at the beginning of the video, Patriots fan, if you didn't know already. I speak on here, bias aside. They play the Jets and the Dolphins, which I mentioned earlier. I think they're going to win those games. Hold on. Who do the Broncos play? Let me check real quick. Give me a sec. I don't want to. If the Broncos play some really shit teams coming out, okay, they play the Chiefs on Thursday, and then they play the Chargers, which the Chargers and the Broncos are gonna have a little something there to play for. Maybe the division there, but Broncos should be able to handle the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs are probably like the worst team in the league right now. But yeah, I think the Patriots will manage to snag that. Broncos and Chargers will be interesting. So we'll see that there, but Jags, I think the Jags will stay in the 3 seed. Steelers will stay in the 4 seed. I think they're going to win that division. I think this time next week, they'll beat Cleveland and the Ravens are out of it. Now, the Chargers and the Broncos is interesting, though. In terms of who gets the 2 seed there, I think the Broncos do still manage to maybe keep the 2 seed, but again, I don't know how that tiebreaker works. So it'll be either Patriots or Broncos, 1 or 2 there. But we'll see with that. I think the Chargers stay. I think the Chargers will move down to 6. I think the Bills will actually, no, I think the Bills lose to Philly upcoming this week. So I think the Bills will be at 6, Chargers 5, and yeah, Texans 7. I think it's set already. I do. I think the AFC playoff picture, I think right now is what it's going to be. I think how it's seeded. I think the Patriots, again, I think they'll be 1. But we'll figure that out here in the next couple of weeks. And in terms of the NFC, Seahawks 1, Bears 2, Eagles 3, Rams 5, 49ers 6, and then the Panthers are 4 and the Packers are 7 right now. I don't know why it has it out of order like that on this. Kind of annoying. Oh, it's because they've already clinched a playoff spot. The Panthers and Packers have it. Okay, I got it. And then on the bubble now is the Buccaneers and the Lions. So in terms of the seeding, I think the Seahawks keep the number 1 seed. I do. And I think the Bears win that division, so I think they'll stay at the 2 seed or the 3 seed, depending on what the Eagles do. I think the Eagles do beat Buffalo this week. So I think the Eagles stay at 3. I think the Rams, I don't think the Rams are going to win that division, so I think they'll be at 5. 49ers 6 makes sense. And then I think the Panthers at 7. I think the Panthers win that division. So that's kind of set for me there with the AFC and the NFC playoff picture. Man, how crazy is that? Bears, Panthers in the playoffs for me. Broncos, Jags, Patriots. It's like a different universe than what it was last year. Ain't that crazy? So that's That's what I think it's going to be in terms of the playoff picture. I think it's set. I looked at it before we got on here, onto the show here today, and I was like, to be honest with you, I think it's set. So that's that for me right there. So Mendoza going to the New York Giants now, I think is a real possibility. We're just going to kind of touch on this here for a minute, and then we'll talk about Mike McDaniel and Zac Taylor keeping their job in Miami and Cincinnati, and we'll get out of here. But yeah, Mendoza to the Giants. I think it's becoming a real possibility. That game yesterday, I watched that game with the Giants and Jackson Dart, and I was kind of like, shit, man. They did not let him throw against our Brian Flores defense. And look, I know the Giants are without Malik Neighbors. I know they're without Scattaboo. I know they're without some talent. I get that. But nonetheless, I say this, and if Jackson Dart and Mendoza were to go in the same draft, let's say this year, let's say Dart had his last season of college, which was last year, his last season of college, if he were to come into this draft with those same stats, and Mendoza were to come in now, which we'll see how these next couple of games go throughout the college football playoffs, which I'll go through here in a minute. If they were to go in the same draft, just right now, there's no doubt Mendoza would go over Jackson Dart. And I don't think anyone's denying that. But what if Mendoza wins the national championship? They'd have a real tough decision, especially if they end up keeping that number one spot. And it's like, Dart kind of plays how he did last game or yesterday against the Vikings. I think you got some real things to think about. And mind you, too, that ownership room, the GMs are going to be like, Dart was Daboll's guy. And seeing how he played throughout the last couple of weeks, Mendoza just won a national championship. If you put these two in the same draft, it's like Mendoza would easily be miles ahead of Jackson Dart. No one would even give that a thought. So I think there is a decision to be made. I mean, I think even if Dart does play okay throughout these next couple of weeks, I still think there is a decision to be made. And I know people were calling Coward crazy for saying it and stuff like that, but I don't necessarily think he's that crazy for thinking that this is a real possibility and it could be a thing that's on the table. I think you could get some really good picks for Jackson Dart. Whether or not a team would give you a first-round pick, teams are desperate for a QB, and Dart does show some flashes of being pretty good. So, and I'm not saying Mendoza is just a grand slam. This guy's going to be an all-pro in this league, a Pro Bowler year in and year out. He's going to go on to win a Super Bowl or two throughout his career and be a great. I don't know. Nobody knows. This guy could be an all-time bust. Shows a lot of good character. Not necessarily saying that Dart doesn't either. But, I think it is on the table. And I don't think the Giants would be crazy for doing it. If you can get some really high-value picks, which I think you could for Jackson Dart, I think anything's possible. Again, like I mentioned, Dart was Daboll's guy. And whoever the new head coach is, and if they're in position to get Fernando Mendoza, and depending on the value they could get for it, if they wanted to get out of Mendoza, and they're like, hey, we're going to stick with Dart, but we don't want to trade out too far. Mendoza's going to be a really high value prospect. This isn't like Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward-ish. Cam Ward was seen as a number one overall pick, but he wasn't seen as a guy who was you had to have. He was seen as he is a number one overall pick, but this was a weak draft class. So mind you, Dart did go in the low 20s in a weak draft class and was widely considered overdrafted. He was maybe seen as a second-day pick, or he was seen as a second-day pick. He was seen as a second-round pick. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, he's a second-round pick. Doesn't mean he's going to work or be a starter. There's plenty of them that have, but I just think if the opportunity's there and you see the talent you have, and you can get some really high-value picks because teams are desperate for a quarterback. And you're telling me the Raiders would trade a first-round pick to get Jackson Dart somewhere along the line? I mean, the Colts just traded 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner, a cornerback who's on a really expensive contract, who's now injured for them. And I guarantee you if they could go back and change it, they would. I think someone would give up a first-round pick or at least a couple seconds for Jackson Dart. So I think there's a lot of value there to be had. But I think there's also a lot of value from trading down for someone to get Mendoza, keep Dart. So it's a weird situation, but these next few weeks will be really telling. Whether or not Mendoza goes on to win a national championship or they get bounced out here this weekend, whatever it is, it's not necessarily going to knock Mendoza's stock down, but it may make the Giants think a little more. So I think that's something that's interesting to see. And whether or not how well Dart plays, if they go in and they just have Dart has a performance like he did yesterday, and Mendoza goes on to win the championship, that can be a problem for Jackson Dart in terms of staying there in New York. So we'll see how these next couple of weeks unfold. Before we get out of here, this last thing I want to talk about is Mike McDaniel and Zac Taylor potentially keeping their jobs in Miami and Cincinnati. Reports came out from, I think it was from Rappaport or Schefter yesterday, talking about how Miami fully intends to keep Mike McDaniel, which I think is absolutely crazy. I think you fire Chris Greer, which they did weeks ago. I mean, months ago to this point, they fired him. And they said that the plan is to keep McDaniel and move off of Tua. Look, I get moving off of Tua, but if we're going to move off of Tua, move off of Mike McDaniel. He is not, look, he's a great offensive coordinator. No one denies that. I mentioned that multiple times now. But as a head coach, no culture. Look, he is in a division now with Mike Vrabel and that Patriots team. Look at what he's done in that team in a year and the culture he's built there. The culture he built in Tennessee. Look at Tennessee with and without him. It's night and day. Mike McDaniel hasn't been able to build any sort of culture in 4 years. Tyreek Hill can't get out of there fast enough. Jalen Waddle, I mean, those players, the locker room has been reported toxic for a couple of years now. Players constantly show up late to meetings. It's just like you're in warm city, Miami. You're in a warm city. You're in Miami. There's players go out, they party, they go to Miami every weekend after games. They don't really care. And Mike McDaniel doesn't really give a shit either, to be honest with you. And he clearly doesn't get through to the players. It's like, if you want to be able to win in an organization that hasn't won a playoff game as long as I've been alive, and I'm like 22 years old, that's an issue. And for Zac Taylor, Cincinnati, I think they have bigger issues than just Zac Taylor. Like, their defense really sucks, and their offense has been great. I don't necessarily think Zac Taylor is the issue. I think it's always been an ownership thing with Cincinnati. They're historically cheap. Look at Joe Burrow when he got injured. They didn't even have a cart for him earlier this year. They had to carry him off the field, and he had some grade 3 turf toe, couldn't even walk on his own power, but they did have a cart for him. This goes back to the Carson Palmer days, the Marvin Lewis days when he first got there, and he was like, hell no, I'm not sitting here practicing with, I think it was the University of Cincinnati, or it was like a high school field Cincinnati was sharing with a team, and they didn't even have priority. I was like, no, we're getting our own facility. And this goes back years and decades of Cincinnati just being historically cheap. Burrow, whether or not he wants to stay in Cincinnati, his vibe is all over the place. God knows what the hell's going on there. But yeah, we'll see. But I think the Mike McDaniel one is a disaster. Cincinnati, I think, is just deeper than Zac Taylor. I don't necessarily think Zac Taylor is much of an issue, but I think if you fire your GM, if you're Miami, you're going to get rid of Tua. Wipe the slate clean. Like, what are you doing? Why are you going to hold on to Mike McDaniel? To me, it doesn't make any sense. He's not a culture builder. It's just, you're just piggybacking off what you've been doing the last few years, which has just been a disaster. So I don't understand that. But yeah, man, that's all I got today, y'all. I hope you all enjoyed the show. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let me know any thoughts you guys have. And yeah, man, it's always a pleasure to be here recording for you guys. So as always, everyone, take it easy.